Shocking news. The Japanese self-defense forces actually defeated the US military? The protagonist, Isami, has been fond of tokusatsu films since childhood. As he grew up, he did not become particularly unique, but he fell in love with the colorful ranger teams and was determined to become a hero, preferably one piloting a mech. Adi later developed close combat mechs, and the nimble Isami became one of the pilots. He achieved excellent results in many exercises and soon participated in a joint mech training battle between Japan and the US. Isami, piloting an old mech, outperformed the rest, including his American team member Lewis, and won the championship. He even teased Lewis, saying, "Who says my old mech isn't great?" Lewis then approached Isami's mech maintenance technician, Miyu, who commented, "If you're not up to it, don't blame the mech's performance. Practice more if you're lacking." Due to his action of breaking into the enemy's rear on his own, Isami won the championship but was reprimanded by his superiors because he and Louis had breached the final zone together. Lewis was immobilized due to a drone's kamikaze attack. If the drone had targeted him, the final winner of the exercise would have been different. Louis, who had his salary docked for 3 months, found Isami and told him that he also had been punished to clean toilets for 3 months. However, he believed Isami's decision to break into the rear was correct and admired him. They agreed to fight together in the next day's Japan-US exercise combat. The next day, the self-defense forces and the US military conducted training exercises in the Pacific with naval and air support for the mechs. This was also the first live combat training for the mechs, broadcast globally. Many pilots who used to fly fighter jets signed up to become mech pilots. Meanwhile, the command center received sudden news of unidentified flying objects heading towards Earth. It was too late when the command center was alerted. A giant armored ship crashed into the ocean, creating a shockwave that toppled nearby buildings and released several aircraft. The command center scrambled fighter jets to confront them, but the aircraft activated their self-destruct mode and seized control of the towers below. The attack wasn't limited to the exercise site. Major cities around the world were also hit by these armored ships from the sky. Isami and his team, initially preparing for the exercise, were urgently called to support the command center. Screams and reports of inability to penetrate enemy armor were continuously heard through their headsets. The mech pilots in combat were then notified that live ammunition restrictions were lifted. The medical team was still rescuing the injured soldiers when robots from outer space charged at them. Isami and Lewis arrived at the scene and rammed into the robots, but couldn't damage their armor. While Lewis distracted the enemy, the captain of Isami's team led the group around to the rear, only to find that the logistics squad had already evacuated. They also learned that all the high command at headquarters were dead. The captain temporarily took over as the highest commander. Isami, breathing heavily and stiff, still moved forward to fight. However, they were instantly overwhelmed by a powerful laser beam. Louis and Isami barely survived. Isami's air partner, Leo, was pinned under a damaged flyer. Isami tried to pull her out. Leo and the injured captain urged him to leave quickly as a second laser beam targeted Isami. At the last moment, a mech appeared in front of Isami, calling his name and inviting him inside. Louis was gathering injured soldiers when he turned around to see Isami climbing into the mech cockpit. With a powerful background music playing, Isami piloted the mech from the sky, smashing the enemy's shield with a punch and wielding a giant mech sword, slashing and chopping through the air, while complaining about the intense background music. Encouraged by the red mech, he shouted out an embarrassing special move name, and then sliced through an armored ship. Everyone on the scene was stunned. The mech, self-named Bravern, claimed to have self-awareness. After the crisis, the survivors mourned their fallen comrades. The remaining leaders in the exercise met to discuss the situation, unable to contact their headquarters globally. The alien mech, Bravern, stated that Earth was facing an unprecedented crisis and that it had come to save Earth. It asked where Isami was. At this time, Isami, who had saved the entire base, was being interrogated as a suspected alien spy. Bravern informed everyone that Earth was being attacked by a huge mothership, which had released 8 subships known as the Death Fleet, aimed at eradicating all humans. Originally inorganic, The Death Fleet had evolved over billions of years to develop self-awareness. Bravern had come to battle the Death Fleet. Initially, some suspected it was an American trick, but Bravern, understanding all languages, directly refuted them, telling them about the crisis Earth was facing and the need to unite all nations. It also planned to share the story of its first encounter with Isami. Meanwhile, Lewis inquired with the logistics team. Miyu and Leo mentioned that Isami had been detained. Given the exaggerated actions of the alien mech and Isami's effortless fighting inside it, it was normal for people to be suspicious. Bravern is still explaining to the headquarters the joy of merging with Isami and confessing its love at first sight for him. Meanwhile, Isami is being harshly interrogated in the interrogation room. Suddenly, enemy aircraft attack the Gulf of Tonkin. Due to a damaged runway, other planes cannot reach the scene. However, Bravern, seeing its fellow mech superbia on the satellite video, decides to go to the battlefield. It asks the headquarters to call Isami, stating that its cockpit is always open for him. Without waiting for approval, Bravern immediately switches to flight mode and leaves. Louis has also received battle orders. Hesitating briefly, he decides to bring Isami along. The fighters arriving at the scene can't penetrate the enemy's shield. Going there seems like a death sentence. As more pilots face sacrifice, Bravern arrives and breaks through the enemy aircraft. It easily destroys the Death Fleet's flyers, but it is no match for the mech superbia. Observers note that Bravern seems weaker today as it frantically calls for Isami on the battlefield. At that moment, Louis kicks open the door of the interrogation room and finds Isami severely tormented. He asks if Isami wants to leave with him, mentioning that Bravern is calling for him. Isami immediately grabs Louis' hand, but when he hears that he has to pilot Bravern again, Isami breaks down, blaming all his suffering on Bravern. Reluctantly, Louis punches him to snap him out of it. No one but Isami can fight alongside Bravern at this moment. However, Isami thinks Bravern just needs a pilot, and it could be anyone. Just then, Bravern is thrown towards them and lands right in front of their car. Isami chooses to avoid Bravern. Louis asks if he can pilot it, but Bravern firmly refuses, as it has already taken Isami's form. What a mess, brother. I thought it was a bromance. Turned out to be a mechmance. Louis can only earnestly tell Isami that he is the only one who can fight and save their comrades. Hearing his teammates' voices over the headset, Isami chooses to pilot the mech and fight. He understands Louis's reluctance. As Bravern fights superbia, it claims this special move will be different. Isami complains he can't understand it at all. Just do whatever with one slash. Soon after, he and Bravern cut down the mech known as superbia. An explosion sounds, and superbia ejects a stream of light into the sea. With the battle over, everyone cheers again. However, Isami inside the cockpit suffers a strange fate as his clothes suddenly burst open. Louis, unable to pilot the mech, walks along the beach to clear his mind, and unexpectedly finds a white-haired girl covered in slime. Isami, whose equipment exploded, refuses to leave the cockpit. Bravern, oblivious to Isami's breakdown, happily comments that Isami seems very comfortable inside it, which disgusts Isami immensely. Louis carried the white-haired girl to seek help from the army doctor. The army doctor, Nina, had been saved by Louis in a previous battle. She examined the girl and found she had only drowned, initially thinking she was a civilian. However, Louis knew this girl was not ordinary and might even be an enemy, so he took her to a hotel outside and checked her in, where the staff misunderstood their relationship. Louis, previously rejected by Bravern, was left with a psychological scar. Waking up, he found training had already started outside, so he left some money for the staff to take care of the girl. Louis sneaked to the back after being late. The commander had already announced that Bravern was now a teammate. They planned to form a team centered around Bravern. Meanwhile, Isami was still nude and isolating himself in the cockpit. Bravern, enthusiastic, had already started intense training and explained the enemy's weaknesses to the team. Louis had been distracted for days. Isami wasn't doing well either, as his nudity had almost become known throughout the base. A partner whom Isami had saved came to thank him, but Isami was too embarrassed to face them. Louis, suspecting the white-haired girl was an enemy, had been secretly meeting her. That night, he discovered she had stopped breathing. That night, the naval fleet was suddenly attacked underwater. Bravern prepared to take Isami into battle, but Isami was reluctant to fight, blaming Bravern for his troubles. Bravern insisted, saying Isami should fight passionately. Isami angrily refuted this, which made the partner he had saved blush. She found Isami very charming. Bravern was also frustrated by Isami, saying if he lacked the courage to fight, he should leave the cockpit. Just as Isami was about to leave, Bravern refused to let him go. Leo criticized the long special training, especially since the battle was underwater. The partner was charmed by Isami's bravery. Miyu and Leo thought she was not picky at all. On the other side, Louis was frantically trying to save the white-haired girl. The bed creaked loudly, and the couple next door exclaimed about the fierce battle. The naval fleet was desperately defending the aircraft carrier. Radar showed Bravern was on the way, and upon arrival, he knocked an enemy plane out of the sky but almost drowned, jumping into the water. Isami was coordinating with Bravern in battle. Bravern injected nutritional fluid directly into the cockpit to help Isami withstand the water pressure. However, Isami fainted from lack of oxygen. Louis was still using a CPR machine to revive the girl. As soon as he touched her chest, the waking girl kicked him away. She then let out a sharp scream, pinned Louis down on the bed and beat him up. Louis, getting beaten passively, accidentally touched a button on the girl's clothes. The next second, her equipment was deactivated. Louis, not daring to open his eyes, was kicked in the head by the girl. The aircraft carrier decided to launch torpedoes even though there were concerns about hitting Bravern. However, Bravern assured them his mech could withstand it and encouraged them to proceed boldly. Meanwhile, Isami woke up after bumping into another mech, saw he was about to be hit again, and immediately controlled Bravern to counterattack. After a tough fight, they defeated the enemy aircraft but were blown away by the explosion's shockwave and landed near the hotel. At the same time, Louis had just subdued a naked, battle-crazed girl named Lulu. When Isami and Louis locked eyes, Isami was furious, accusing Louis of fooling around with girls while he faced humiliation on the front line. Louis was at a loss for words, and to make matters worse, after being defeated, Lulu clung to him and revealed her name. The higher-ups were still strategizing, having stabilized the region around Hawaii. They debated which country to assist next. Bravern suggested that as a hero, he should arrive with the sunrise, and chose Japan, the farthest east. The troops began to prepare for deployment. Miyu specially designed a combat suit for Isami to prevent another wardrobe malfunction inside the mech. Louis admired Isami's new gear. Lulu kept close to Louis, which made Isami frown. Louis tried to explain that he and Lulu were not in a romantic relationship, but to Isami, it seemed like Louis was flirting with Lulu. Frustrated by his suffering while Louis seemingly had a romantic encounter, Isami stormed off. However, Lulu saw Isami's departure as an attack on Louis and punched Isami, sending him flying. Bravern then arrived and took Isami away first. Leo completely understood Isami's feelings after witnessing the awkward scene where two men and a woman barely had any clothes on. They took Lulu back for examination and interrogation, discovering she had no internal organs, only strange items on her hands, and could not understand human language, only showing closeness to Louis. Thus, Louis became Lulu's guardian. Lulu was soon attracted by the smell of food, but without internal organs, she vomited soon after eating. Louis had to apologize to the military doctor. However, Lulu was well cared for by Louis, resembling a reliable male guardian. Meanwhile, other girls styled Superbia's hair, which Isami noticed. Realizing Isami seemed very concerned about Louis, Bravern decided to take him out to clear his mind. The higher-ups deployed a global Hawk drone for reconnaissance, relieved that the supply island had not been attacked. There was internal suspicion about Bravern's reliability since they had lost contact with the outside world. If the outside world had not been attacked, Bravern's presence would be highly suspicious. It was also stated that once the drone reached the island, they would know the situation outside. Bravern took Isami to a tavern, which Isami expected to be closed due to attacks everywhere on Earth. Bravern noted that Isami knew less about humanity than he did, as the tavern was full of military personnel. When Isami appeared, everyone called him a hero and expressed their gratitude for him and Bravern saving them. Isami was surprised, as everyone wanted to buy him drinks, and looked forward to fighting alongside him to reclaim their country. Two airmen who greeted Isami were set to investigate the outside world ahead of him. Amidst the cheers, Isami was overwhelmed with drinks and his mood slightly improved. He was brought back to base by Bravern. Two girls saw him and worried about him driving drunk. Honoka, previously saved by Isami, will be Isami's controller. Karen, the blonde girl next to her, is Lewis's controller. They both hope to reclaim their country from the Death Fleet soon. Bravern told Isami that Lewis is a reliable soldier. Once on the battlefield, the enemy will also fight hard. Isami took Bravern's words to heart. However, Lulu clung to Louis throughout, even during meetings. Everyone suspected Louis might develop feelings for Lulu. At this time, everyone gathered in the combat room. The Global Hawk drone had reached Japanese airspace. The clouds above were very thick. The drone descended to 10,000 meters altitude. Only then could they see clearly below. Tokyo had become ruins. The clouds the drone had passed through were actually dense smoke from the city being bombed. The people at the scene were tearful. No battle scenes or survivors were visible from the drone's view. This situation terrified the command center, but also strengthened their resolve to fight. The Air Force had already set off for Japan as the advance force. Lewis took Lulu to the combat meeting. Lulu had learned to communicate. Lewis had shown her superhero movies in the room. Lulu learned from the colorful team in the movies, saying she wanted to protect Earth. Louis and Isami looked at each other, speechless. The commander held a meeting, and Bravern joined the combat discussion. The higher-ups finally realized the invasion of Earth was real. They planned to land in Japan in 7 days and gradually reclaim countries worldwide. The core of the combat plan was Isami and Bravern. The expectations put a lot of pressure on Isami. Lewis noticed he wasn't very happy, so he offered to treat him, changing the subject. Leo, also from Japan, was worried about his homeland and struggled to eat. Finally, Isami told him that without eating, he wouldn't have the strength to fight. This motivated everyone to continue eating energetically. Lulu liked both Lewis and Bravern. Isami joined the Air Force in combat. Bravern encouraged him to interact more with his teammates. Louis told Bravern that Isami needed to relax. Otherwise, he might be exhausted before the battle after 7 days. Bravern understood, but felt helpless. He thought Louis, as Isami's human companion, might understand Isami better than he did. In the following days, Louis tried to communicate with Isami, but couldn't find the right opportunity. He then talked to Bravern, discovering Bravern had created many Gundam models with his mech. Louis worried that talking to Isami might backfire. Bravern told Louis not to overthink it. Communication isn't just about talking. So Louis had an idea. On the 3rd day, Louis invited Isami to spar. They planned to fight quietly on their own, but other crew members discovered them. This turned into a spectacle with the entire fleet watching. Even the superiors were ready for entertainment. The person in charge even sent the commander. In the first round, Louis ate a punch from Isami. Soon, he hit Isami back at the waist. The first round was restrained by both, but unexpectedly, Louis tackled Isami in the 2nd round. Isami looked at the commander, claiming foul play, but the commander looked away. Louis said that Isami's punches were so powerful that forceful dialogue was the only option. The 2 men grappled on the stage, capturing Miyu's undivided attention from below. Meanwhile, Bravern extended a microphone attached to a camera behind them, exchanging glances with the captain next to him. They broadcasted the fight globally. Louis asked Isami if he was upset. Isami denied it while continuing to fight Louis. Louis remarked that Isami was under too much pressure and didn't need to overburden himself with the responsibility of protecting everyone. Isami responded that he too was a soldier, aware that they might sacrifice themselves for their comrades. Regardless of the pressure, he would protect others. Louis knocked Isami down with a punch, challenging him to stand up and fight if he truly wanted to protect everyone. He also told Isami that others would be saddened by his plight, emphasizing that they were all comrades and he shouldn't bear the stress alone. Nobody wanted any losses. Isami got up and punched Louis back, vowing he wouldn't die. And then both men collapsed. Though the dialogue was peculiar, it turned into a meaningful exchange of heartfelt thoughts. Although Louis seemed to be just voicing his inner thoughts, Isami indeed felt much relieved. Lulu, who admired strength, challenged Isami to a duel, but Isami, drained, was kicked into the sea by her. The aircraft carrier had reached near Japan, initiating the Sunrise operation. They could not contact the land and had lost air superiority, so Isami and Bravern were to lead the way to check for survivors. If none were found, they would commence bombing at 6 a.m. Louis also piloted a local mech to join the battle, with Lulu insisting on coming along but being held back by teammates. As the plane took off, two girls noticed Lulu was missing. Lewis had come to ensure Isami wouldn't fight alone. Bravern, confidently claiming to be the strongest mech, left everyone speechless. When the two landed, they had an hour and a half before the missile launch. Tokyo was in ruins, and enemy planes soon appeared. Isami engaged in combat up front, while Louis placed monitoring radars in the buildings behind, trying to find survivors, but found none. Thus, the command center decided to launch the missile, with 10 minutes till impact. Isami wanted to search for more survivors. Before Louis could comfort him, he found Lulu clinging to his mech. Near the coast with 2 minutes left until the missile launch, Louis could only protect Lulu while persuading Isami to stop searching. With 20 seconds on the countdown, Isami took to the sky to declare his presence and ask if there were any survivors. Just then, Lulu spotted several mechs emerging from behind. Surprised to find they were friendlies, Isami immediately reported to headquarters after seeing the mechs, confirming there were survivors. Unfortunately, it was slightly too late. The missile was still launched. However, Bravern, seeing Isami's determination to save his team, fired at full strength, redirecting the incoming missiles toward the enemy targets. As Bravern controlled the missiles, which had shield-piercing capabilities, the enemy was annihilated. Bravern reassured Isami, saying it was all right. Louis didn't have time to reprimand Lulu as the sun rose. They had reclaimed Tokyo and made contact with local forces. After learning that Japan had been invaded by an alien fleet, their military strength was segmented. They had not been able to reach Yokohama due to satellite disconnections and were unsure of the enemy's strength. The enemies seemed endless. As long as the subship existed, enemy mechs would continually emerge. Isami and Bravern had already destroyed the subship in Hawaii. The Tokyo commander was curious about the situation, but the command in Hawaii couldn't prevent Bravern's sudden appearance, who began recounting his and Isami's love at first fight. Meanwhile, Louis met some local mech pilots who had helped him earlier. Before he could thank them, alarms sounded again as the enemy attacked. Louis wanted Lulu to evacuate quickly, but she was signaling to him from the front. Isami piloted Bravern and charged out. They realized the enemy aircraft was superbia, previously defeated by Isami, and it immediately targeted Lewis's mech where Lulu was. Since superbia didn't speak Earth languages, Bravern installed a plugin on it. Superbia, now able to communicate, introduced itself. Bravern was outraged that Superbia had forgotten his name after their intense previous battle, igniting an argument that left everyone speechless. Superbia stated they couldn't fight unless they returned Lulu to it. Seeing Superbia, the commander wanted to recall other mechs, but Bravern insisted that Lewis needed to command them against Superbia while he and Isami dealt with the mechs inside the subship. He entrusted the responsibility to Louis, confident that Superbia was now manageable by him. Isami worried about Louis, but Bravern asked him to trust his judgment, claiming to know Louis well, and joking about Louis having undergone full-body hair removal, leaving Isami speechless about the relevance to their battle. The commander had to trust that Lewis could handle it, hence assigning him command of the mechs on the ground. Lewis assured Isami to go and fight, promising to strive in battle and prevent any injuries. Meanwhile, Bravern and Isami boarded the Death Fleet and immediately spotted a mech at a higher level. Bravern, without wasting words, cleaved the mech in half. On the other side, Louis and his team bombarded Superbia, which was still demanding Lulu's return, only to be met with a barrage of mech fire. Lewis noticed that Superbia's mech seemed unshielded, so he immediately called for aerial artillery support and instructed his teammates to switch weapons. A variety of heavy artillery bombarded Superbia, breaking even its strong disposition. He cut through the smoke directly and lunged at Lewis, demanding Lulu to be returned immediately. Louis wondered why it was so fixated on Lulu. Isami wanted to rush to aid his teammate, but Bravern said their fight wasn't over yet. The subship seemed to be able to revive the chopped mechs. Bravern ignored its words and struck it with another blow. However, the black mech could revive continuously and criticized Bravern's fighting as not thrilling enough, demanding to see the most intense explosion. Bravern's sword was shattered, and he asked Isami what they should do. Isami said they obviously needed to destroy its spawn point. Bravern then summoned a huge axe, claiming it could only be used if they were in sync. Isami complained, "Why didn't you bring this thing out earlier?" Together, they destroyed the black mech and the subship with a single axe strike. The black mech didn't resist at all and excitedly said this was the explosion it had been waiting for. It mentioned that if they wanted to fulfill a real wish, they should seek Bravern. Isami was confused, wondering what was going on. Meanwhile, Superbia ripped open Luis's armor and discovered that Lulu could speak and think for herself. It immediately said this was not the Lulu it had expected, and that it did not match its desires. Then it just sat down and started daydreaming. After the black mech exploded, a cockpit was left behind. The laboratory opened the cockpit and found a girl inside who looked exactly like Lulu, but she was already lifeless. Meanwhile, Superbia was being tortured by the interrogator who had previously questioned Isami. "Dude, do you also use official stickers on mechs?" The interrogator was then blown away, apologizing to Isami before leaving. Luis went to talk to Superbia, learning that their Death Fleet clones to produce Lulu, who serves as their energy source. Every battle consumes the life within Lulu. Despite this, they still couldn't defeat Bravern, and its own Lulu had changed into this form. Superbia was somewhat devastated. So, Luis suggested that he replace Lulu in piloting Superbia, which might avoid energy extraction. Superbia accepted the proposal, but the experiment encountered complications. Superbia had a rejection reaction, and just as Louis was ejected from the cockpit, he was called by the higher-ups and promoted to lieutenant. He was assigned to select and form a 6-person mech squad to assist Isami and Bravern in battle. He was also informed that a gift had arrived from the Yokohama base. At this moment, Superbia was chatting with Bravern. It had always thought that Isami was a being like Lulu, but was surprised to find that Isami also had his own name and saw that its own Lulu could have self-awareness. Superbia was questioning its life. Meanwhile, Louis received a new mech from Yokohama based on Bravern and the enemy mechs, but it was a 2-person combat mode, and they hadn't yet chosen another teammate for Louis. Unexpectedly, Superbia was able to activate this new mech. Superbia also dreamed of becoming a hero, having grown up watching Superman, Gundam, and Tokusatsu shows. Being a hero was incredibly cool for him. Their mission this time was coastal combat. Louis would form a team to support Bravern, which they named Brave Knights, a name Leo mocked as being very cheesy. The Air Force had to refuel the fighter jets continuously during a 70-hour flight. Meanwhile, the combat team in Japan received ample supplies, but these resources had to be used sparingly as logistics were still lagging. Superbia sealed itself up, and Lulu insisted on fighting alongside Louis, who refused. At this moment, Isami approached, and after their conversation, Isami felt that Louis was more of a hero than he was. Louis shook his head, stating that Bravern could not accept him, and remarked that Isami and Bravern were soulmates. He declared he would protect them as a knight, leaving Isami embarrassed. At that time, the fleet that had already departed encountered unexpected thick fog at sea, with visibility less than 2 meters, giving everyone a bad premonition. Bravern immediately took off with Isami, telling Louis before leaving to try to rescue teammates and to stay true to himself no matter what, as courage would lead the way. Then, Louis entered a new mech and discovered that Miyu had also placed Lulu in the cockpit. More alarming was the Air Force's discovery of 3 Death Fleet subships standing over the sea. Standing before Louis was a female mech. Superbia sensed that the Death Fleet was not playing fair as they swarmed in. Meanwhile, Isami was preparing to fight 2 intelligent mechs. Unexpectedly, the female mech propositioned Louis, leading to some bewilderment about his appeal. Or was it the appeal of the female mech? In front of Isami, one of the 2 mechs was constantly releasing white smoke, apparently the culprit behind the fog. Bravern told Isami they needed to defeat this smoke mech first to give their teammates room to maneuver. As for the other mech, Isami had to trust in Louis and the rest. These mechs often spoke of wishes, also mentioning the black mech previously destroyed by Isami. Isami noticed something was off with Bravern today. Meanwhile, the female mech before Louis happily stated that her wish was about to be fulfilled. The next second, a fighter jet beside Louis was teleported to outer space. The female mech claimed it could see into Louis's heart and was reshaping time to have a rendezvous with him. Louis disagreed with mating, and she then bombarded Louis's teammates, forcing Louis to agree under duress. However, this was just an excuse. Louis fired at the female mech, trying to shatter it to buy time for his teammates to escape. Nevertheless, the female mech then took control and waited to attack Louis's teammates. Thinking Louis was willing to engage with her, she directly fired at the Death Fleet's main body in the sky, destroying the recently revived teammates. She declared that from now on, all defeated mechs would lose the chance to revive. The female mech then ejected Lulu from inside her, telling Louis he was welcome to merge with her anytime. Louis decided to explode the female mech, ejecting Lulu to escape, and crashed his mech into the female mech. At this moment, Isami was also in a dangerous state. Bravern was no match for the two mechs. Louis sacrificed his life to take the female mech with him, encouraging Isami over the headset to keep fighting. When Isami heard Louis' voice and his teammates' cries, he knew something was wrong. Yet at that moment, he faced the onslaught of two other mechs. Leo then informed everyone through the headset that Louis had died. Enraged, Isami immediately engaged the two mechs in battle. At this time, Louis found himself appearing as a spirit, with the cockpit covered in blood. Lulu seemed to sense his presence. Bravern urged Isami to calm down, but Isami couldn't. Louis came from a wealthy family with parents working in the military. He had always aspired to be a hero and joined the military as a mech pilot after his parents' deaths, believing he could become a formidable hero. However, when a crisis hit, he wasn't the hero he hoped to be. Instead, Isami was chosen. Nevertheless, Louis still wanted to support the hero. The female mech announced its impending death and invited Louis to return to nothingness with it. However, Louis refused, promising Isami he wouldn't die. At this time, Isami also didn't want Louis to die. Their wishes resonated at the same time. Both wanted to save the world. Louis' emotions absorbed the female mech's body, and he returned in the form of a mech, looking exactly like Bravern's original body. He had also traveled through time to the day Isami was attacked. Louis finally realized that he had been fighting alongside Isami all along. He was Bravern. Damn, this is too manly, right? So the script for Louis and Isami was actually, "Brother, don't look back, it's me." Now transformed into Bravern, Louis encouraged Isami not to lose himself and reminded him that they were meant to save the world. Isami, grieving Louis's departure, failed to realize that Bravern and Louis were the same person, and at that moment, Bravern was thrown away. Everyone was looking for Lulu, who had already recognized that Bravern was Louis, so she immediately rushed to their side. At this time, Isami fell into despair, blaming his own boastful talk for Louis's death. However, Lulu's voice awakened him. Bravern told Isami, "You never give up, right? Believe you can do it." He then let Isami pull the top lever and invited him to merge again. Isami instinctively agreed, then was stunned as a blue mech flew out of the base and merged directly with Bravern, revitalizing Isami. Seeing this, the enemy mechs were satisfied, thinking that dying at the hands of the stylish Bravern was a fitting end. They immediately attacked Bravern, but the merged Isami and Bravern activated invincible mode and instantly defeated the two mechs. As these mechs vanished, 3 subships of the Death Fleet also collapsed. Everyone celebrated their victory, but mourned Louis' death. Isami was grateful to Louis, and Bravern, surprised, finally relaxed upon hearing Isami vow to continue fighting with Louis' courage. "Damn it, you hid your name just to spare Isami the pain, don't love too much." Meanwhile, the mech Superbia felt that the current Bravern was indeed its true opponent. Lulu found Superbia, which had sealed itself away, and expressed her desire to pilot it. Superbia dismissed her as mere expendable, brash for someone who had just gained consciousness. Lulu countered by claiming Superbia was her uncle and that she had come back from the future. Previously, Lulu had undergone a reincarnation. In the past cycle, she was unaware that Bravern was Louis and, like everyone else, believed Louis had died in battle. After Louis' death, Lulu relied solely on Isami, who, in the previous timeline, fought as a widower, raising a child. However, Isami died in a major battle, and before dying, Bravern revealed he was Louis. Afterward, Bravern and Isami were retrieved and inspected, revealing that Louis had fused his soul with the female mech's core and traveled back in time to fight alongside Isami as Bravern. To save Isami and Bravern, Lulu collaborated with Miyu and Superbia. Superbia regretted not having the courage to fight alongside Isami and Bravern before, so it agreed to help send Lulu back to when Bravern was first created. Lulu was tasked with piloting it and fighting alongside Isami. With her memories intact, Lulu traveled back to the past right when Lewis died. She approached Superbia, hoping to pilot it in the final battle against the Death Fleet to help Bravern and Isami. However, Superbia initially refused her request. After the collapse of 3 Death Fleet ships, global communications began to recover. The remaining Death Fleet was in Hawaii, and Isami decided to head there. Concerned, Lulu found Isami, worried he would depart early. Meanwhile, Superbia had a private conversation with Bravern, recalling Lulu's warning that they would die in battle. It hesitated but chose not to inform them. Bravern then told Superbia to learn to wait, accept, and care for Lulu, believing they would make a great team. Lulu, after changing Isami's gear, knocked him out to prevent him from leaving early. She then approached Superbia, which agreed to collaborate. As everyone watched, Lulu jumped into the cockpit, but Superbia initially rejected her. The two argued, and Lulu berated Superbia, leaving it unable to retaliate. Meanwhile, Lulu had tied up Isami and thrown him into Lewis's room, where he woke up and cried while holding Louis's clothes, witnessed by a passing superior officer.
俺はお前と一緒に続けてくれ、ルテナント。
Lulu continued trying to merge with Superbia. Eventually, Isami freed himself and rushed outside the battleship, finding Lulu struggling to dock with Superbia. After a morning of struggle, Superbia suddenly received Lulu's memories, understanding her desire to fight alongside Bravern. Superbia realized it should not use Lulu's energy, but merge with her instead. Together, they struck down a subship with a single blow, moving everyone. Bravern called it the power of courage and love. Lulu asked Superbia if it still wanted to fight Bravern, to which Superbia replied it did, but it now wanted to fulfill Lulu's current wish and accepted being called Uncle. The group then headed full speed towards the final destination. However, Isami and Superbia left the carrier at night, deciding to head to the battlefield, determined not to let anyone else sacrifice. This time, Superbia would accompany Isami in battle. Their final destination for battle is the island of Hawaii. The island's residents are evacuating as a volcano there is about to erupt. Superbia shared this intelligence with Isami on their way, as it is also a member of the Death Fleet. There are 3 mechs on that volcanic island. One is solitary and won't attack unless provoked. Another is consuming magma and has no interest in fighting. Superbia is unfamiliar with the third. Before the battle, Bravern suggested they rest and open up to each other. Initially, Isami didn't want to pilot Bravern and only fought out of obligation. Now, he sincerely wants to protect everyone, and Bravern, who helped him regain his courage, touched his heart. Bravern, moved, said it could only fight because Isami was with it and hugged him, expressing its favorite person was Isami, joking about their deep bond. Lulu climbed up the cliff to call Isami for dinner and witnessed this intense moment, exclaiming that such scenes shouldn't be shown to underage girls. Lulu prepared a delicious grilled fish meal, which Isami praised highly. Encouraged by everyone, Superbia tried it and was instantly captivated by the taste, enjoying it immensely, though Bravern couldn't eat. That night, they watched the stars on the beach. The next morning, they began their plan to defeat the 3 mechs on the island, starting with the mysterious mech full of secrets. As 2 mechs landed to confront it, the mysterious mech queried if their approach was wise. Bravern and Superbia felt something was amiss and decided to proceed cautiously, sensing the mech wasn't easy to provoke. Isami and Bravern were about to activate their second fusion mode, but the mech gestured, making them suspect an ambush, so they canceled the fusion. The mysterious mech then performed a transformation, showing no hostility. Feigning strength, the mysterious mech hoped to scare off Bravern. However, Superbia, loving challenges, found such an opponent exciting and quickly overpowered it, revealing the mech's pretense. After defeating 1 mech, Superbia challenged Bravern to fulfill a long-held wish, which Isami and Bravern accepted. The head of the bewildered mysterious mech, now just ahead, was shocked by the infighting but was soon sent flying by Bravern. Isami and Bravern initiated their second fusion and battled Superbia again. The head of the mysterious mech, now in the lava, felt content seeing this scene. Superbia intended to leave this world after the battle, but Bravern challenged it to fight a stronger version of itself. Superbia was tempted and exerted all its strength in the battle. The shockwaves from their clash vaporized the mysterious Mech, and Bravern and Superbia formed a deep friendship. Before they could speak, a black Mech suddenly attacked Bravern, claiming it couldn't fulfill its desires. As Isami stood up, he saw Bravern heavily damaged and listened to its last words, overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events. The future has evolved beyond Lulu's knowledge. Originally, the black Mech and Bravern were destined to perish together. Isami would die from severe injuries in the subsequent battle. However, now the black Mech has ambushed Bravern. After Bravern's disappearance, Isami completely lost his courage. Since growing up, Isami never thought of being a hero again. He felt immense pressure when Bravern chose him, but Bravern awakened his memories of heroism. Meanwhile, Superbia is fighting the black Mech. Already drained from the battle with Bravern, Superbia decides to eject Lulu from the cockpit, choosing to face the black Mech alone. It wishes for Lulu to survive. If it loses, it wants to fight alongside Bravern in another world. Superbia is then killed by the black Mech. At this point, Isami goes mad. Knowing only itself and another Mech that is absorbing magma remain on the planet, Isami surrenders, waving a white flag and asking the black Mech to spare others. As the black Mech prepares to kill Isami, Lulu pushes him away, stating she cannot change history and urging Isami to find a way to survive. Threatened by the black Mech, Isami fearfully flees to Bravern's cockpit, not ready to die. Unexpectedly, he encounters not Bravern, but Lewis's soul there. Isami, furious, punches him, lamenting their failed promise to save the world together. Lewis tells Isami he is not dead yet. As long as courage exists, his will can create new life. After their conversation, Louis leaves, and Bravern entrusts its body to Isami. Inspired by Bravern's words, Isami merges with the Mech as the black Mech targets Lulu. Regardless of his own thoughts, he is now a hero. As a hero, he fights to the end. Isami uses his body to repair Bravern's Mech, transforming into its golden mode. The black Mech's ally, overloaded with magma, explodes behind him. Isami tells Lulu to leave immediately and engages the black Mech. The black Mech, seeking death, desires one last intense battle. Golden Mech Isami grants its wish, splitting the black Mech in two. As Isami mourns his comrades, the largest mothership of the Death Fleet lands on Earth. Isami shields Lulu from the shockwave. A new Mech, named Vita, emerges from the mothership, unknown to Lulu's memory. It claims to be a true life born after fulfilling 8 wishes. Isami fires a light wave at it without hesitation. Due to Superbia's death, the 8 Mechs that landed on Earth have vanished, allowing this new life to emerge. Vita stated that it had sent out the 8 sins to invade planets across the universe in search of true death and to understand life. However, other planets were too weak and never managed to completely kill the 8 sins Mechs. Earth was different. After the death of the 8 Mechs, Vita fell in love with the sensation of death, but still wanted to survive. It decided to link mentally with all of humanity, planning to continuously kill humans to experience the joy of death after killing Isami, yet without truly dying. Thus, Vita directly attacked Isami, trying to make him understand its lofty ideals. Upon hearing this, Isami immediately knew Vita was an enemy and attacked it right away, ignoring its words. Lulu noticed that Superbia's Mech was glowing. By then, Isami had already torn Vita's face apart. Meanwhile, the aircraft carrier reached near Hawaii, and headquarters began supporting Isami from sea, land, and air. Vita intended to destroy the fighter jets, but Lulu and Superbia resonated together. Everyone's will of courage was focused on Isami. Oh my DGA, Vita was injured, angrily flew up into the sky and prepared to destroy the Earth with one strike. Lulu and Isami teamed up and struck Vita with a slash, remembering Lewis's past, and then decapitated Vita in space. Everyone was worried Isami wouldn't return, but unexpectedly, the Mech brought Isami and Lulu back and disappeared after the battle. Isami and Lulu were in tears, but then Louis's voice sounded, saying he had lost the ability to fly. Lulu joyfully rushed towards him. Isami was stunned. "Ah, you are Bravern?" And the crowd cheered as they approached them. "I didn't know." The plot suddenly unfolded rapidly and ended at lightning speed. I hadn't reacted yet when the production team came over with dumpling wrappers and fillings, holding rolling pins and shouting, "Let's make dumplings!" It turns out only the world where Superbia was injured was achieved, but it indeed fulfilled its long-standing wish to fight Bravern.